Hi, y'all. Happy Monday, and welcome back to Samantha's Beauty Confessions. Today I'm chatting with Lisa Huff, a hairstylist from Illinois who has transformed her career into a thriving mastermind membership called Stylist Soul Tribe. And this is a little bit of a full circle moment because Lisa and I have known of each other through Instagram for several years now, and we've connected briefly during this time, here and there. But recently, we've been able to connect on a much deeper level, and I'm really excited to be able to share that with you today. On today's episode, Lisa takes us on the journey of how she started her mastermind and opens up about some personal stories that kind of played into this decision. We discuss the importance of personal growth and mentorship, how to create a true work-life balance, the importance of authenticity on social media, and the value of having a good support system with you along the way. Lisa's story is just so inspiring, and I'm really excited for y'all to hear it. So let's go ahead and welcome her to the podcast. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited. For everyone listening, we were talking a little bit off camera or off audio recording, I guess. And Lisa and I followed each other for how long on social media? Like 10 years or something.
It's been years. It truly has been years. I feel like I've known who you are for years. You're one of those people that we've DM'd a little bit, but I've never gotten to know you well. And so just a couple weeks ago, we got on a Zoom call for the very first time, just to touch, check in. You've got a podcast, I've got a podcast, and we were like, we should totally interview each other. But that's what we were saying beforehand. You're like, I don't even know what direction we should go. And I'm like, I think it'll be very natural. We know each other, but we don't know each other. We know of each other very well, but we don't know each other deeply at all. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, and I'm a curious person by nature. So I love
Yeah.
just like giving people or asking people all the questions. So
Yeah.
tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do. And yeah, just let
Yeah.
them catch them up to speed.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Lisa Huff. I live in a small town in central Illinois. I grew up in the Chicago suburbs, but I live about 2.5 hours from Chicago right now. So I'm about halfway between Chicago and St. Louis, right in the middle of Illinois. I am a hairstylist by trade. I have a studio suite that I do still work out of just a couple days a week. But over the last 5 years, I have built up a mastermind membership for hairstylists, Stylist Soul Tribe, if you're watching on video. It's right behind me. And I have been spending the last 5 years, it grew as a very baby idea that I had. I just wanted to chat with more, other hairstylists. And it started small and it's evolved a lot over the last 5 years. And that is my main gig now. That is more so my full-time job. But I do still love being behind the chair. I love getting out of the house. I love getting dressed. I love talking to people in real life and not through a computer screen. So I am still behind the chair, 2 very short days a week. And that's kind of the vibe right now.
Yeah, and I was saying too that you're really one of the first people who I don't know the right word I'm trying to say here, but
Hmm.
like kind of branched outside of working behind the chair. When did you say you started it? 5 years ago?
Yeah, 2018 is when I put out the initial. It started as an Instagram post. I want to start a mastermind. And before that, I was trying to do some other things. I knew that I was ready to evolve in some way digitally beyond behind the chair. I had a YouTube channel. I was blogging. Like I was doing some different things, some like influencer stuff or whatever. And then this idea of a mastermind kind of dropped in. And at that point, I was just throwing spaghetti and seeing what stuck, and I just kind of threw it out there. And I had quite a few people interested in the beginning. And it's so different now than what it was. But the initial excitement that I had then has not gone away. Like it still is so clear to me. Even when big ideas come in, I'm like, no, Soul Tribe is still where my focus needs to be, at least right now. Like it just feels
Hmm.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you know anything about human design?
A little bit. No, not a whole lot.
Do you know what you are?
I think I'm a manifesting generator, which sounds about right. Here's a tricky thing. So all of these things, and I just was watching your Instagram story, but while I was driving, which I shouldn't have done, but on my way into here, and I was seeing you say something about a birth chart too. I don't know what time I was born, and my mom says it's morning. That's all she remembers, and my birth certificate is like a like a endor or a verified copy, but it doesn't say the time on it. So I feel like I miss out on all those things. My friend Kylie, I was telling her that the other day because she's into like astrology and all that. And she was like, I think that means you get to pick. And I'm like, okay, maybe I was born at 11/11 then. I don't know. So yeah, I always feel like I want to do all those things, but I don't know my true birth time. So
Yeah, I'm like, just make it up. I'm with her. But also, you can do, have you taken the Enneagram test?
yes, I am a big fan of Enneagram. Seven
Okay,
wing eight.
what? Seven wing eight. Okay, because I
Mm-hmm.
was just, the reason I was asking that is because I'm like you're, a lot of people have ideas, obviously, but you actually like ran with the idea so early on as one of the very, like, there wasn't anyone doing it. Is that kind of
Mm-hmm.
why you did it? Because there wasn't anything like it at the time, or?
I am definitely just like a doer. And I think now I attract people who have big ideas and are sometimes afraid to do it. I think sometimes my gumption is like a little bit contagious for people, but I don't know. I just don't really have that in my head the same way some people do of like, I don't know. I don't really let doubt get in my way. I just, if I have an idea, I run for it. If it's not hurting anybody, what the hell? Why not do it? That's
I
just the way
know.
my brain works. I don't
I
know.
I love that. I'm a doer too, but I'm a doer like 2 years down the road after I've
Mm,
convinced my brain that I can do it. So
mm.
I'm always fascinated by just the different types of people out there. So would you say that like in your childhood that you were just like super supported and kind of built up and everything, and maybe that's how come you're.
This will give you actually a lot of clarity. So I have an interesting upbringing. I've opened up a little bit on some of it. I have, some obviously some great memories growing up, and I've had some struggles too. My mom has a pretty severe mental illness, and so like that's part of like the harder part of my story. But when I was a kid, I'm still good friends with my group of girlfriends from when I was like 5 years old. It's wild, and I think that also tells you like the way friendships and connection, like what they mean to me, is so like ingrained in my DNA. But when I was a child growing up, I don't want to say I was like the leader. We call ourselves the Fab Five. Obviously, that was invented when we were 5 years old, but it's stuck. We still say that. But I used to give my friends daredevil lessons. That was what Lisa did, the psycho Lisa. I was a tomboy. I wasn't a girly girl, but I used to like make my friends walk across their playgrounds and like give them, like, I don't know. I always just had this in me. I was a little bit of a hyper monkey psycho. And I still kind of have a little bit of that in me. And I don't, yeah, so they make jokes all the time about it, like Lisa, their daredevil lessons or whatever. So I think from a young age, I was pushing people to do things that made them uncomfortable, and I have no idea why.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
a very like, I don't know, because kids are like fearless naturally. Everyone is when they're
Yes.
born, but then somewhere in the world, usually something happens or someone says something or that
Yes.
doubt gets planted. And, unfortunately for a lot of us, that's the case. But I love that you're just
Yeah.
like, no, we're gonna go for it. We're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, and I've always just like I said, I was always a monkey. I'm a very like naturally high energy kind of person. And then it's funny because in the same token, I'd give these daredevil lessons, but then we'd have a sleepover, and my friends would turn on a scary movie and I'd go home because like it's
Yeah.
not that kind of scary. I don't know, but I always just had this, I don't know. I still say it. I don't know if it's audacity. I don't know what the hell it is, but I have empathy, obviously, for people who really like struggle to get going or really struggle with self-doubt or things like that. And I feel like now I draw those people in so much because I'm almost the polar opposite of what they are. So I have so much empathy for that, but I can't give you like a secret formula. It's always just kind of been there and came to me. Just
So,
go for it. Why not?
and when you started your mastermind, like had you been a part of one, or like what was the structure like in the beginning days of it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. No, I hadn't, but I wanted to. So I got into like personal growth. I joined an online program. I was in Thriver Society. Britt Siva was like one of my biggest mentors. And I think I was just a really young and impressionable age. And growing up, like I really got like not the best grades in school. I went to cosmetology school just because I was sick of high school and it was like it seemed like a fun elective. I was like blowing off school a lot come my senior year. And so I really had this kind of mentality. Like I was lazy is not the word, but I just was not driven. And then between like having my daughter, I think I was a very young mom. I got pregnant at 19. I had my daughter right after I turned 20. My brain really changed a lot. And those of you that are moms, you understand that. And it was also like my formative years. So I went from this kind of like, do we swear on here?
Yeah, you can say
Okay.
whatever.
I went to this kind of like, fuck everything. What's the point? I was kind of angry. I had my daughter. I feel like I became a much more positive person. I was like, okay, I see what life is about. Like, I see why this is life is worth living, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then when a few years later, I decided, okay, I think I'm ready to start taking this career of mine serious. You know, we moved around a lot for my husband's work. My daughter was young. We were young. We were just kind of trying to figure it out, like, scrape by, how can we make do? But then once we decided, like, we're buying a house, we're staying put, I was literally working at a Smart Style inside of a Walmart, like doing $12 haircuts. And I was like, like, what if I just get intentional with this? What if I just like try to make something of this? And this was like the rise of Instagram. And so I started following hairstylists and I just started kind of paying attention to what people were doing. And I found Thrivers and that program. And I don't know what it was. That was the first time in my life I ever had like a mentor that saw me way better than I could ever see myself. Like I never felt that from my parents. I never felt that from my teachers. I never felt that even from like my cheerleading coaches. Like it was always kind of like, I even kind of remember almost like as a teenager, kind of knowing I was a little bit more of a bad kid where like friends' parents didn't really want them to hang out with me. Like I didn't think that highly of myself because I was kind of trouble. And so once I found somebody that just like really believed in me and gave me something that like, here, do this and it'll work. And then I saw results really quickly and it was working. And then I, got into personal growth and I read The Secret and I read all of these books and I started listening to podcasts and I just remember like every day it was like I was learning like so many new things. I'm like, oh my God, I never even like thought of any of these things. And at that time, all these people, I would listen to their podcasts, I'd read these books, and all these like big name authors, speakers would talk about masterminds. And I'm like, I want that. Like, how do I find that? And I was kind of seeking one out. And the only way you could be in a mastermind was if you were like an author and you made $1 million a year. And I'm like, well, surely there has to be a smaller version for people like me. Like, how do you get to that point? And I didn't see anything that existed. And I had, at that point, I was like building up a small community of hairstylists on Instagram. That's probably around when, we started following each other. And I just put a post out and I was like, I want to start a mastermind. If I can get 4 or 5 other stylists interested. We'll meet regularly. We'll hold each other accountable, blah, 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 blah. And I think I had like 15 people interested from the get-go.
I love that. I'm just like,
Yeah.
wow. Because like the people listening, I literally watched you do it from the beginning
Yeah.
till now. So it's just
Uh-huh.
been kind of crazy. And you did have that YouTube channel. I can remember that. And
Mm-hmm.
that was when I was like, wow, how's she like, I want to do that, but I didn't even know the first thing to do.
Yeah.
And back then there weren't like tutorial videos
Mm-hmm.
as frequently as there are today,
Yeah.
and so I think that it's just, where do you think like the tech side of you comes into play? Because I feel like you're so smart with that too.
Oh my gosh, thank you for saying that. I don't really feel like I am. I think it's just been a lot of learning as I go. I just remember thinking like if I don't know how to do something, there has to be a way to do it. And like I found like Gary V really early on and like when he wrote like Crushing It, I think that was back in '08. He just talked about like sharing yourself on the internet and the power that that can have. And like that just really stuck with me. And I'm like, I'm at the perfect age where I'm like, turning into an adult with the internet. I just felt like if I don't know how to do it, I'll figure it out. And I didn't do it well. I still don't really do it that well. I'm still trying to figure it out every time. So yeah, I just figure it out as I go. I don't know.
I know, no, you do it very well, I think, but I also like, one thing that I'm just sitting here questioning is like, so many people have the doubt that you just
Mhm.
didn't have. And I think that that is a very
I
big,
know.
that's what set you apart. That's probably why your mastermind just blew up, because you are such a like positive light. Like just
Hmm.
talking to you, you're positive and
Thank you
happy
for
and just
saying that.
smiling. And I think that, like Gary V, you just put yourself out there and the right people come.
Yeah, I think I just found enough like few people that were influencing at that point in time and read the right books and just got on where it like, but it was also truly my formative years. Like when my frontal cortex was developing is when I was taking that in, that it just kind of turned into the person that I am now. I was turning into an adult at the same time. So yeah, thank you for saying that. And I will say, and again, I have empathy that this isn't how people are wired and you can't change your DNA, but I will just say for somebody that is teetering on that like doubt or not, now that I've got roughly around 100 people in my mastermind, I coach people regularly. You just, I don't know. I'm so drawn to the people that just have that freaking go for it attitude. And I hate to say it, but like I can see it from 10,000 miles away who's going to be successful and who's not. Because if you don't believe in yourself and what you're doing, how are you going to convince all these other people to believe in it? Like you have to at least have some conviction there in order for other people to care. So like just breaking through that. And I wish I knew the perfect formula, but it's like, just, I don't know. The
Well,
people who have that, and I can just tell whether I pour into them or help them find a solution, whether I help them or not, I can tell certain people are going to get it done. And I look up to people like that. So every time I'm stuck and doubting myself, I'm like, no, that's not the person I am. That's not my identity. I'm going to just get it done, you know?
yeah, and I think that whether it's a mastermind or just like a mentor or like a coach, whatever you want to call it, I think that that is exactly what, like you said, the person made you see yourself in a light that you had
Mm-hmm.
never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, like, I know it's an investment to hire a coach or to join a mastermind or whatever, but like that's what it was for me. I had to hire someone to help me.
Yeah.
And really looking back, that person didn't do much for
No.
me other than ask me questions that
Mm-hmm.
made me start thinking. And once I started thinking,
Yeah.
there was no going back.
I agree. And I think there's even something different that happens, and maybe not. Maybe people who had really impactful, like coaches or something, like I'm talking like sports, like young kids or some other really impactful, maybe a pastor or something like that, that really influenced them. Maybe it's not quite that the same, but I also think that the act of paying for personal development changes something. Because I vividly remember when I first thought about joining that very first program, it was $50 a month. I was like, how the heck am I going to afford that? That felt like so much money. I remember telling my husband that I was doing it. He was such a hater. Love you, Ryan. He's come around. He will admit that he was wrong and that paid for itself a bajillion times over. But it was like the new age. Like there wasn't really people doing digital education. I remember him being like, that is a scam. This woman's going to take your money. Blah, 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 blah. Like he gave me such a hard time about it. And I just remember having this like gut feeling of like, no, I can do it. And now I've spent at this point 5 figures easily on coaching and masterminds and things like that, like at a time. Like I've gotten to the point where I've made a $10,000 investment. That's the biggest investment I've made yet into a mastermind. And I have just learned that from that $50 jump to a $10,000 jump, I grow so significantly along the way. And I wish that like you didn't have to pay money to do that. Cause like you said, even the $10,000 mastermind, there was nothing that profound that I got from it. But it's when money is energy. And when you give that energy behind something, you almost like step into this next realm and you open yourself up to just like a whole nother like level of wheeling and dealing and trading. I don't know. Like once you make investments like that, and of course there was a lot along the way, like little pieces. There's something energetically about investing in that where you're like, okay, well, I paid energetically, I put into this, I'm going to get something out of it, that you show up different. It doesn't even really matter what the coach or the other person on the other side does. You go into it of like, well, I paid for this, I'm going to get something from it. And then you act different.
It's like the accountability buddy at the gym, or
Yeah.
like I'm never going to go to the gym and lift weights on my own. I have to
Yeah.
take classes. Otherwise, I
Yeah.
won't do it. The
Yeah.
class is basically the mastermind or the coach.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. It's just you put that investment in to hold yourself accountable to show up. And in
Mhm.
showing up, it's just you open up this space that you never even knew was there.
Yeah. And so I'm just super into money mindset. I'm into manifestation. I'm into like money blocks and things like that. And I just think, and again, I don't know who's listening. Maybe you're further along than I was back then, but I used to just be so guarded of anything financial. Like I would just say, we can't afford that. We can't do that. We're broke. We can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And like once I changed that identity and now that I've like have a taste of it, I'm so like hooked on it. And it stands out to me so clearly when I talk to people that still deal with that, and I try to keep my mouth shut and not preach to them. But like once you recognize that you can just get past that and have this like abundance mindset and know like what goes out will come back, and like I don't know, I'm super into that.
No, I totally agree. And one thing that I think is not that you even said
Yeah.
this is like a specialty of yours, but I'm just
Uh-huh.
wondering because I think that you have really good insights, is that I think people in today's world get so caught up in the numbers aspect of everything, like with followers. And
Mm,
they're like, well, I have to get 10,000 followers before I can do this, or
mm,
50,000 before that, or I have to live in a nice house before I can post content,
yep.
to show up. Like, what advice would you have for those people?
Mm.
Because I feel like you're going to have a really powerful message here. I just threw that on you, but
Okay. I have a few things that come up, and this is one thing that stuck with me even from, back then, which you probably would see because I used to show it on my Instagram story. I lived in a probably less than 1,000 square foot little house, and that's when I started making content. And again, Gary Vee, he was one of my, bigger influences. I remember reading his book Crushing It way back when, and he talked about the power of documenting over creating. And he has a whole like chapter of it in his book. And I go back and I look at it regularly. And he says, what if Vera Wang was vlogging when she made her very first sketch? And like, so that's just, and I just remember like thinking of that and being like, I can document this at this seedling along the moment, and then with that and all that hard work comes what eventually feels like you can, create or whatever inside of that just really stood out to me is just like documenting the present moment rather than feeling on you have to like put on this like fake it till you make it, pretend like you're this version of yourself that you're not. That just always stood out to me. And anytime I'd feel like, oh God, but my house looks like bad or this looks stupid, or even the other day I was just, posted something stupid on my story and it took me a microsecond of like, oh, should I not do that? Is that gonna turn some people off? Are they gonna unfollow me? Whatever. I just go for it because it's just like that's just my truth. That's who I am right now. And then it almost does come with, not that I've like arrived or made it or by any means anything like that, but I do have more success now than I had 5 years ago. But like those people knowing who you are is just like a more solid, like you don't have to pretend to be this fake person then. Like I'd rather grow organically as who I truly am than try to keep up with this like facade or something, you know?
mm-hmm. What's the
Yeah.
Gary Vee book called?
Crush it. I can
Crush
grab
it.
it if you want. It's
Yeah.
black and green. Do you want me to grab it so you can see the cover or no?
Yeah, you can, because I'm gonna order it.
Okay,
I'm
so
I'm like,
and then for the people on YouTube that want to have it, so there's Crush It. This was the original one, and then Crushing It. So I have
I'm
like
like really into reading right now. I feel like for the
so
longest
this
time I
is
was like,
old. So I think you should read it. It's outdated. It's old. This is like when YouTube was very first starting. It was written in '08, so it's not really relevant anymore. But this is what like changed my mindset around it. And then years later, I want to say this came out in maybe like 2021, he wrote Crushing It. And this is more modern, but even that in 3 years, things change. So
mm-hmm,
this one he interviews like I don't know, Lauren Everts from the Skinny Confidential is featured in here. A lot of influencers that are featured in here. And this is about people who read this book, created something on the internet, and saw success. And then he like interviewed all of them and said, like, how has that evolved? Because in this one, he talks about like platforms that don't even exist anymore. It's
mm-hmm.
old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Skinny Confidential, she's one that I've followed for a long time too.
I
And
love
she
her.
she always talks about how she used to do like facial like steam with
Mm-hmm.
spaghetti in her kitchen because she was
Yep.
too
I remember
poor.
that too. Yeah. And I
But I
followed Lauren for
totally
a long time. Yeah.
she's I love her and her kids are so cute. I'm obsessed
Yes.
with her. But what I think that you said is I think Gary Vee said it is what you're
Yeah.
mentioning is
Uh-huh.
that if she would have documented her first sketch, well,
Mm-hmm.
that is what I talk about in my classes all the
Mm-hmm.
time is
Yep.
that even if you don't post it online, document it for yourself
Mm-hmm.
because and then as you grow, you'll feel more comfortable posting it online,
Yep.
but at least you'll have it because for
Yep.
me, I was I struggle from insecurities like deep, 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 deep,
Mm.
deep. And so I deleted all my first
Mm.
videos. And
Mm.
I'm so sad that I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and I get that, but I'm too unorganized and I'm over here like, well, I don't want to pay for all that storage, so I'd rather live on YouTube so I can just go back and find it. But yeah, I really just have like no shame. I don't know. And of course, if someone played an old YouTube video right now in front of me, I would cringe. I'd be like, "Oh my God, turn that off. I cannot listen to that." But like I don't know. And whether I'm trying to think of who else has like said things like this, but it always stuck with me like as the internet was really evolving and coming into its life and like the rise of social media and stuff that like my great grandkids could potentially see the things that I'm putting on the internet. And I just think that's cool. I don't know. I'm like, what do I just want to be some fossil that nobody ever knows about? Like, I'm going to share what's on my mind. Who knows if it'll ever turn into anything or if it won't, but I'm glad I have it. And now every single day when I get my Facebook memories, I'm like, it's just like a little walk down memory lane. Sometimes I do delete the really cringy, embarrassing ones, but who gives a shit? I don't know.
No, I know.
Life's too
And
short.
it's a good reminder of like sometimes you get so caught up in the day to day that you don't see the growth. You
Hmm.
forget. Like I
Yeah.
forget that 5 years ago I couldn't even film a video of myself because I've
Yeah.
done so many since. But like that wasn't always the case. And I
So I
think
know I can ask
sometimes
you this on my podcast, but I just want to know right now. So like what was that for you? If you felt that paralyzed 5 years ago to where you are now, like what was so impactful for you?
my divorce, I got a
I
divorce.
remember, okay, I remember you saying that. That was your like life-changing awakening.
Well, yeah, because I was like, how much worse can it get? You know,
Mm,
like I just had the ultimate failure publicly.
mm,
So who gives a shit if my house is messy? Um,
literally.
and that's when I hired someone to kind of hold me accountable. I put money toward it
Yep.
and they were asking me, you know, I had deadlines and I had to send these
Mm,
videos in. And of course, I deleted all of them after
mm,
I sent them in because I was like, these are so cringy. But now at my
mm.
classes, people are like, you were probably never awkward. And it's like, oh no, I was the most awkward. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yep.
promise you, I could probably in any room,
So
I bet,
awkward it doesn't exist
yeah,
anymore.
like
That's how uncomfortable it was. Yeah.
it is embarrassing. Like 9 times out of 10, I was the most awkward in the room.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that that it's just that smidge of belief that you
Mm,
need, just a tiny little glimmer that like
mm.
you can do it. And some people have never been told that before, you
I
know?
know. Yeah, a lot of people. It's surprising how many people. And so, yeah, once I had that myself, I like it was almost like addicting. Like, well, I have to give
Hmm.
this to other people. Like, I have found so much belief in myself that I'm overflowing with it. Like, let me pass this along and inject it into others. So yeah, once you like have a taste of that, it just feels like your like duty as a human to pour back into other people in that way.
For sure. But okay, so you also said you're not organized.
Okay.
So do you do all like today, right now, do you do
Mhm.
everything on your own or do you have like a team?
Okay, good question. So like business wise, you're saying.
Yes.
I have an incredible, I call her an assistant. That is not the right word because she is so much more than that. Leisha, which is also weird, Lisa and Leisha. I know it's kind of confusing, but she almost is just like if I wanted to take all the best versions of me and some better ones, you know, this version. But she was in Soul Tribe. She was a Soul Tribe member and she booked a one-on-one coaching call with me probably like 3 4 years ago 3 years ago probably. I'm trying to think of how long she's been working with me. And I remember she booked a one-on-one coaching call, paid for it. I thought I was like going into this to coach her. We were like 15 minutes in, she was like kind of talking about some of her stuff that she wanted to do. Then she just lays that on me and she's like, okay, so actually why I booked this and why I'm here. And she just like pitched herself to me. She's like, you're a one woman show. Here are some ideas I have. Here are some ways I can help you. I love Soul Tribe so much. I want to get behind you. I want to help grow it. Like she fell into my lap. And I remember being so worried in that moment, like, can I afford, you know, a team member? How do I even structure this? What do I even do? And I reached out to my friend Hunter. I don't know if you know Hunter Donia, and he recommended a book called Rocket Fuel, which is also behind me. I could go grab that too. That was a life-changing book for me. And that talks about the relationship between a visionary and an integrator and how every company that you know about, Walt Disney, McDonald's, whatever, all these like big visionary names had an integrator behind them. And they're that much quieter behind the scenes. Like you don't know they exist, but they bring the details to life. And that book is really, really good. And so I read that and I sent it to Leisha right away. I was like 3 chapters in. I Amazoned it to her house. I'm like, okay, if we're going to do this, read this, let's be on the same page. And I just kind of grew that role with her. She's still with me. I have one other kind of like a VA. She is a Soul Tribe member as well, and she kind of did something similar. Just like if you ever need any extra help, like let me know. So I have that, and then obviously like I have a financial team, like my CPA, my whatever, all those things. But actual like who helps me in the day to day, Leisha helps me so much. I have another VA that helps a little bit, and that's kind of it right now.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm like, as you're talking, I'm like, if there's another Leisha out there listening
I
that wants to
know.
fall in my lap,
I
please
know.
message
And
me.
that's the thing. And I have friends that have grown really, impressive companies, and their focus is like hiring team. And sometimes I'll have this in my head of like, oh, I really should be doing that. Like I really should like have these roles and build these structures and build these like departments and scale in that way. But it just feels so unnatural to me to do it like that. Like I needed somebody with no pressure to just be like, can we try this together and play around with this? And it was just so perfect. So I don't know if there's any way I could have replicated that. And also let me say, not just anyone could have worked with my brain the way hers does. So like it really does kind of feel like fate a little bit too. Cause like where I lack, like I have big vision, but I really lack in the detail work. I am kind of chaotic and flustered, and like my memory kind of sucks. And like she just gets those little details so well that like I can just always turn to her when it comes to those things. Oh, and then I guess I should say this. I put on annual events inside of Style Soul Tribe as well. I have a event planner for that because I could never do that on my own. So like I have more, kind of contracty help, but Leisha's my like consistent person.
Okay, yeah. See, and I totally agree with like no one's brain could work with yours like hers did because I have I'm only in the salon 1 day a week now, but I
Yeah.
have someone that helps me that day that her brain and my brain like I always say like we have the same morals and values,
Yeah.
but we think totally different and I
Yeah.
think
In
that's
the
why we
best way,
work.
like in the most complimentary way.
Yeah, but everything I do digital, like online, that's just me. And I'm like, I'm in desperate need of a
Mhm.
helper online. I am
Well, people
maxed
that are
out.
listening to this need to be brave enough to reach out. And that was the thing too. And honestly, I'm not trying to put this out there either, but like Leisha was so like, let me help you. And Gary Vee talks about this too. Like she was like, Lisa, you don't even have to pay me in the beginning. Let's figure it out. And in my soul, obviously knew I was going to be paying her very soon. But even that like zero pressure, it wasn't like this person of like, well, what do you have to offer me and what benefits and what this and what that? Because I would have just been way too scared to take that on with somebody. And I've given her like 3, 4, 5 raises since then. And I still feel like I could never pay you enough money to compensate you for how much you helped me. That like she knew as soon as I could make it work, she was going to be compensated well. But I just was so fearful in the beginning. I was like, I cannot commit to anything. So I just want to say if anyone reaches out to you that like keep that in mind too, because that is a hard jump to make. And it's so hard to know where do those funds come from, especially a job like that. Like, if you're hiring a commissioned stylist behind the chair, you can easily say, okay, they're going to be working these many days. This is what they're charging for haircut. This is the split we can do. But when they're just taking a piece off of your load, there's really no instant, profit margin in that. So that was really scary for me too. And honestly, that's still scary. I probably could use more help, but I just need someone that's like flexible enough to figure that out until I get the business smarts, I guess, to know an easier way to do that. I don't know.
No, for sure. Cause I'm like you said, I'm really chaotic also. Everything
Mhm.
I do is in real time.
You
And
should read
so,
Rocket Fuel.
okay,
Yeah, it's
rocket.
really, really, really good because I think you're a visionary. And that's what
Okay.
that's what visionaries are. You see the big vision, you have the ideas. You're an idea generator, but it's like bringing things to life or sustaining them once they're brought to life and then scaling like to a, more organized, better level is really hard for me.
Yeah. The tiny details.
Mhm.
I'm like, why can't I just get to the end?
I know. Yeah.
Get me there quickly. No,
Yeah.
I'll definitely because like I said, I'm getting into books now, which I
Mhm.
feel like I'm 33, but I feel like in a lot of ways I'm going backwards a little bit because I'm doing the things I should have done in my 20s
Mm.
now because I see the
Shoulda, coulda,
value.
woulda. You had your journey when
Exactly.
you were supposed to.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's a good like tip for people listening is that reading I feel like it has a bad stigma for a lot of people because no one wants to it's not fun seeming, but
Mhm.
the value
Mhm.
you can get, even in listening to podcasts, don't you feel like
Mhm.
I've
Oh my
learned
God.
so much stuff from listening to podcasts? That's why I wanted to start one.
Yep. I mean, I am just addicted, and I know people think I'm nuts. And when I started reading and kind of on that, and I know some people are a little burnt out now, the hustle culture. And at a certain point, once you've read so many books, it does start to feel like, okay, everyone is saying the same thing. Like you will
Hmm.
get to that point eventually. But I still like, all these people are reading all this fiction now, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I wish I could get into some of the smut, but like, if I'm going to sit down to read a book, I want you to blow my mind. I need to get inspired. I need energy to keep going. So I am a nonfiction lover. Another book, God, this is my love language, is just recommending books to people. But I'm reading The Creative Act by Rick Rubin right now. You would also love that.
Okay, I just bought that book. Is it the one with a circle and a dot?
Yes, it's
Okay,
so good. I'm like
I just
halfway through it right now. It's so good.
that's my next one. I'm reading a book right now, but I bought that and I recently bought the Nike, the creator of Nike. I think it's like Shoe
Oh,
Dog or something.
okay. I have to
Everyone
look into
says
that.
everyone says that for marketing tips that book is so game
Okay,
changing.
good to know. So what are you reading right now?
That
Oh, that
right
one.
right now I'm reading one that's called God, I can't think of the name. Something about like being yourself in a world that try it's
Okay.
by Case Kennedy is the author of
Okay.
it.
Okay.
I
You're gonna love the creative act. And I literally, when I was watching your Instagram story on my way back home, when you were talking about Adobe Illustrator, it's like about art, but like art could be anything. Art could be music, art could be paintings, art could be a business, art could be whatever, but it's about like creativity. And Big Magic was a big book that changed my life as well. And it's a very Big Magic kind of vibes. Like when you get an idea, how to bring it into place, how to see it through to completion, how to believe in yourself. And so when you were talking about Adobe Illustrator, I was like, you need to read The Creative Act.
My mind is blown by Adobe Illustrator. I cannot believe it's been free at my fingertips for all this time. I'm
Now
just
you
like,
know. I can't wait to see what you do with it. And then I'm going to be picking your brain probably in, 6 months or a year as well. Like, tell me, because I have a graphic designer that I work with and she uses it, but it's such a fine line of like, when do I outsource this or when do I do it myself? Because I'm already doing so many things that I would love to play around as well.
but were you like a paint kid? Like I was on paint
Uh-huh.
24/7.
Uh-huh.
I think you could outsource something else and do that yourself. It is fun. Like my boyfriend's probably gonna change his password so I can't get on it anymore.
So do
Because
you do it
I'm
on the
just like,
computer or on an iPad?
I did it on my computer last night, but
Okay.
I think the iPad is because you have a pencil and you can
Uh-huh. My husband
I
has a really nice iPad that he bought like a year ago that was really nice one and he never uses it. And I've told him before, like, I'm gonna steal that from you
steal
and
it,
okay.
take it. So does your
Right.
husband, what's he do?
He's
Does
an
he help?
iron worker, so he is the least creative person. I mean, I love him. He has such a different brain than me. And let me tell you this, when I went through my like spiritual awakening, reading the books, doing all the things, I so badly wanted him to like get behind that and like for us to be this power couple and like you can start a business too. We can all start a business. And thankfully, through the years, I've learned and it hasn't like screwed us up too much because for a while I used to be like annoyed with him that he
Yeah.
wasn't on that same journey as me, but that is just not him. He will never own a business. That is not his personality. He wants to clock in, he wants to clock out, he wants to never think about work again. He loves what I do and it's really, I think we have a great balance because he's like a union iron worker, so he has incredible benefits, which obviously being self-employed doesn't have. No, and he has incredible benefits, but there's also that like risk reward. So like he has a very safe job
Hmm.
that keeps us like steady and safe. And then I get to take all the risk and like maybe see really good results from that. So it's been like a really good flow. But I will say, you want to read this book when I'm done? No, he doesn't. He does not. He is not interested in that. And it used to really bother me, but it does not anymore. It's just that's not who he is, and it's fine.
And y'all have two kids, right?
We do. Yep. We have an 11-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. We started dating when I was like 17. He's 3 years older than me. He was like 20 at the time. I don't know. Have you heard any of my story with all that or no? Okay.
Mm-mm.
Well, we're already 50 minutes in, so we'll see. When me and Ryan first started dating, I was young. Like I told you, I was kind of trouble. When we met, was like clean. But then he like relapsed on heroin really quickly after we started dating. So we have been through hell and back together. He
Hmm.
got clean February 10th of 2012 and has been sober since then. So we have been through a lot together. We were kids together. We were messy, really hard shit together. But it's really cool to look back on and see everything that we've created.
No, I love that. I love
Yeah.
people's like stories. No,
Hmm.
I don't think I've ever heard you talk about that. I was wondering though, like your kids, is one of them more entrepreneurial and one of them more like, I want to clock in, clock out type?
Oh, that's hard to say. That's really hard to tell, I think, at their age still. I don't know that yet. Skylar, my daughter Skylar, she wants to, right at this moment, she wants to be a psychiatrist, and I think she will do that. I think that would be great for her. She loves people. She is so empathetic. She is so emotionally intelligent. So like that would be good for her. Benny wants to be a pizza man. So like that gives you a little
Love
bit of
that.
their personalities. He wants to drive a Bugatti and he wants to be a pizza man. So
I
like I
love
don't
it.
know what the hell that means, but yeah, Skylar is much like God, I don't even know the right words, but like she is deep, she is a feeler. And Benny's more athletic. He's, I mean, he's also 8. So who knows what that's gonna evolve into. But for the last like 3, 4 years, you ask him what he wants to be a pizza man. So I don't know I don't know if either of them are gonna be entrepreneurial or not.
I love that. And I think I was just saying earlier today that if I could have another job, I wish I would have been a psychiatrist because
Mm.
I feel like you can't, I mean, just especially if she's empathetic and feels
Oh
things, I
my
think that's a
gosh.
very perfect job. And
She
I'm
is.
excited to see if he's a pizza man with a Bugatti. I
I
love
know.
that.
Isn't that so funny? So as I said, I'm like, bud, you're gonna need to own like a lot of pizza shops if you want to be Bugatti. And he's just
Yeah,
like,
you
okay,
got to make a
mom.
whole bunch of
Yeah.
pizzas.
He doesn't know what that means. And I don't know why he always says that. Like, I'm like, do you want to deliver them? Do you want to cook them? I don't know. And I mean, he watches like some YouTube videos. He probably would like to just be like a YouTuber or something like that. But my daughter, like back in COVID times, we started her YouTube channel. She has like a tiny little channel that she'll record videos for, and she'll send them to me and be like, will you post these for me? And I still do sometimes. Benny has not done any of that. I think he would though. We are, how old are your kids?
I don't have any kids.
Oh, why did I think you had
I'm
kids?
kidless.
Oh, I don't know why I thought
I
that
I
you
have a
did.
niece. I have a niece and nephew that I keep
Maybe.
quite a bit that I post on my stories and stuff. So
Okay.
it might be them.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, if you were a mom, you would understand this. We're at a very fine line. And this I think is interesting because I'm so like such a tech lover, but also like screen time is not good for my kids. And it is the only thing like gluten-free dyes. Like I am not crunchy with any of that, but I see a direct relation between how much screen time my kids have and their behaviors. So like I want them to like learn those things, but also like you're an asshole if you have too much screen time. So I also don't let them have a lot of that. And that's a struggle of being a parent
For sure.
in this
Like,
day and age. Yeah.
yeah, because it's the only thing like that really a lot of times they want because a lot of parents don't let them have it. And it's the one
Uh-huh.
thing that'll keep them occupied for a long period, but
Uh-huh.
it ruins it's
It's
just
so bad for their
so
brain.
damaging.
Like
It's
you
so
can
bad.
tell it. I mean, and they will literally be perfect angels and be silent and get sucked into video games, YouTube videos. And like we used to let them a little bit because it's convenient, but then their behavior is so bad when you tell them
Mhm.
to take it away. So I know the moms listening can relate to that. It is a struggle. So yeah, I'm like kind of try to be that parent when I let them dabble in it a little bit, but not too much. It's hard to navigate that.
One other question though I have about
Yeah.
being a parent is
Okay.
that so I don't have any kids, but I know that probably most of the listeners do. How do you have any tips for work-life balance? I know that probably doesn't exist at all,
No,
but
I'm gonna disagree. I think it exists very well. I don't know.
you
I
do?
think I really truly do. My time with my kids, like my off time is so sacred, but this is part of like what I coach to. I genuinely believe that anybody in this industry, if you're listening and you're a hairstylist or if you're entrepreneurial in any way, there is zero reason we can't work our ideal schedule. And my ideal schedule is done by 4 o'clock at the latest every single day. I am cut off from the world on the weekends. You cannot get a hold of me on the weekends. The yesterday I went to a class and there was some Soul Tribe members there and I really wanted to be there. My daughter's band concert was, I had to leave the class an hour early, but it was a no-brainer. Like I'm
Mhm.
I'm not going to sacrifice that. It is so important to me, and I've seen that like you can earn great money and work literally the exact hours that you want to work. So I don't know. I will say that I am a firm believer in that. You just have to decide what's really important to you. And now let me also say this. Financially, if you're behind the chair, you may have to like hustle a little bit in the beginning. And I had to do that. I did do that in the beginning, but then I had coaching and I had the, clear path of like, cut your schedule back, which raises the demand on your time versus the supply, raise your prices, grow, hit your demand again, cut your schedule back again, raise your prices. And like, that's what I coach people to do on a regular basis. I'm not saying you can work your dream schedule tomorrow, but you can work it eventually if you write out exactly what it is. You decide what works for you stick to it like stone, and you work with business smarts, economic smarts, and you adjust your pricing and pay according to that. I really do. I mean, I literally am 2 days a week behind the chair, 6 hour days. So like Monday, Wednesday, Friday is Soul Tribe 10 to 4. Tuesday, Thursday, 10 to 4 is behind the chair, and that's my schedule. And if my kids have a field trip and I want to go to it, I take off. I don't know.
I think that where people come up or people feel like they don't have a work-life balance is because of what we just said about kids, like the screen time.
Mm,
Like I'm done working at the end of the
mm,
day, but then when I get off work, I have a choice. Am I going to go home
mm,
and be, you know, particular with how I'm spending my time and be
mhm,
mindful? Or am I going to go home and disassociate from everything I
mm.
just did and
Yeah.
scroll?
Yeah.
Because then you look at the clock and you're like, shit, it's 10 o'clock at night, which I'm guilty of doing that a lot. But it's the
Yeah.
days where I feel like I'll go to work, then I'll take my workout classes in the evenings, and then I go home and I choose
Mm,
not to. It's
yeah.
those days where I go to bed feeling better,
Mm,
where I wake up
mhm.
more energized. So I think it's more so what you do after hours that makes you
Totally.
feel overwhelmed. And
Totally.
the more mindset, which I've also been
Mhm,
guilty of, is like,
mhm.
okay, I've got all this going. So what else can I do?
Yeah. And I'm guilty of that too. But for me, I've just created enough. And I think you'll kind of see this in like the creative act to that book. I have time when my kids are at school, which also this would be different if my kids were babies and hanging on my, like my kids are at school right now. So, I mean, summertime will be a little bit different, but I have time where I'm creative. I have time, and it's when my kids are not home and my husband's
Mm-hmm.
not home. Like I've really crafted my schedule so that now, don't get me wrong. Are there days that I scroll a little mindlessly? Absolutely. Now that the weather's getting a little bit better in Illinois, it seems a whole lot easier to not be doing that. But I don't know. I'm really strict on like I'm doing what I need to do in these times, and then maybe because when I started working from home, I had to be much more mindful of it. Like I close my computer 4 o'clock at the latest, and I'm out of work mode. Every here and there, there's like an emergency or something I have to tend to. But I just try to be really, really mindful of that. Because you're right. At the end of the day, you lay in bed and you're like, well, shit, I don't like the way I showed up today. And I'd be lying if I said I don't have those every once in a while. But I just gauge that and then try to adjust my behavior based on how I'm feeling at the end of those days, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
And one last question as it comes to that is that
Yeah.
with with your social media, with your DMs and stuff, I know you communicate with people mostly in the mastermind, but
Mhm.
do you have like a set, I don't know, schedule, or do you try to set aside a specific amount of time each day to
Yeah.
do those things?
Yeah, my DMs aren't to the point where they're out of control by any means. You know what is out of control for me, and I could suck my time if I let it, is my inside my mastermind, we use this app called Marco Polo. It's like a video. At any point in time, I could open Marco Polo and I have 250 unwatched polos. There's no possible way. But as soon as I realized, this is just my truth right now, as soon as I realized that was getting to a point where there's no way I can keep up with it, I just communicated to people, Marco Polo is there for you guys to connect with each other. It is a tool. It's not a task. There's no chance that I'm going to see it. If you want to hear from me specifically, if you have a question for me specifically, solo polo me, I will always check those. But no, I drop my kids off at
Yeah.
school. That's kind of, I clock in the beginning of the day. I kind of start watching polos on my drive home. I have, my phone set up, and that's just kind of when I start. And then once I'm done, at this point, it feels like work. So it's kind of nice to set it down and walk away from it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I was asking is because when I was, growing my social media, I had
Hmm.
times where I would sit there and spend just who even knows? Like I would reply to
Yeah.
every comment, but as
Mm.
the page has grown, I can't do
There's
that
no
anymore.
way. Yeah.
I
There's
mean,
no.
I could, but
Yeah.
my whole life would disappear.
No, it would be a full-time job.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
that it's just like you said, you do what you can and
Yeah. And
you
I'm
just
so intuitive. Like, I like to do what feels good. And if my life, my business, my clientele, if anything ever starts, like I check in with myself so regularly. If I look at my day ahead and I'm like, shit, I don't want to do this today, or I have so much to do today, that is alarms, red flags, like something needs to change because I refuse to have a life and a business where I feel that way. I need to feel excited every single morning. So like, to me, that's just like, I would need to find a solution then. Yeah. And like something like
Mm-hmm.
that with replying to everything, there's no possible way that anybody
No.
could do that. And so that's just when once that no longer feels fun, you start kind of changing. And it does suck that the platforms will act different because of that, and you're not going to see as much growth, and that can be very toxic. But what's the point of having this big page if you're not even, happy spending your time and energy that way?
I'm like raising my hands to the sky on
Mm-hmm.
that. It took me this long to finally realize that. And it is a whole other mind trip that I'm working through right now of
Mm,
like stepping back, because
yeah.
what in the hell's the point? What did I build that for? To
Mm-hmm.
lose all my life.
Mm-hmm. And literally, like Meta is one of the biggest companies in the world. There are departments that there are very educated, very high paid people coding this and creating this to be so addictive in that way, and to reward you when it sucks your time away, and to penalize you when you start to step away. But that's just when you have to say, I'm done playing that game, And sure, does it kind of suck? Could you have gotten more leads or more sales or more conversions? Sure, but you are going to hate your life if that's where your focus is.
Hate it. Trust
Yes.
me on that. You will hate it. And one day really soon, I will do an episode about that. But it's like,
Well, I feel
uh-uh.
like now I'm already thinking whenever you book your one on mine, I'm gonna have a lot of questions to
Yeah,
ask
you
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 about
can ask
that.
me whatever
Okay.
you want. I will spill the tea, so to speak.
Mm.
But tell everybody how to find you. Because do you still accept, like, is your mastermind like constantly just growing and growing?
Yeah, no, we hit capacity. When I hit 100, I realized like I am not remembering people. I'm not remembering what somebody told me a month ago, and I should do that. And I started not loving the way it felt. So we do have it at capacity. That is a constant struggle of mine. What is that eventually going to turn into? Because it cannot be here forever, obviously. But no, we are, you can apply at any time. And if there is an opening inside of a tribe, because people are also churning and leaving. So if there ever is an opening and that is a good fit, I let a lot of people in through the back door. If that ever happens. But then twice a year we do a big launch. So I do a big launch in January when I do my vision casting workshop, and I do a big launch in the summer when I do my resource fair. So we're starting to prep for that. That's going to be in July this year. So I am mostly hanging out on Instagram, Lisa Huff Hair. If you look up Stylist Soul Tribe on Instagram, that's also my page too. But I definitely spend more time on Lisa Huff Hair. I have a podcast now called Stylist Soul Tribe Conversations, where it's all everything. It's some business, it's some personal. I just realized I was behind the scenes having such powerful and impactful conversations on a daily basis, where I was like, it is a shame if I don't share this with more people. Um, so I spend some time over there, and yeah, if you ever have any questions, reach out and let me know. If you are a stylist and that sounds interesting to you, reach out. But yeah, if any of this kind of resonated, I put my podcast up on YouTube. You can find me in almost all the places, but Instagram is my main hangout.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here. I'm like,
Thank you for
I just
having
love
me.
I just love chatting with you, and I know so many people are gonna benefit from this episode. Okay, y'all, that's it for today's episode. Be sure to follow the show on whatever platform you're listening, and leave a rating and review to show your support so we can continue growing together. If today's episode really resonated with you, you can always share it to your story, and be sure to tag me so I can personally thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll talk to you again next week.